I, 30F, inherited my grandmother's house when she passed away last year. It was a beautiful 2-story home in a quiet neighborhood where I grew up. My grandmother lived there for 40 years and kept it in perfect condition. When she passed, she left it to me because I was the only grandchild who spent significant time with her, helping her with groceries and doctor's appointments during her final years. I had already moved to a different city for my job in marketing, so the house was sitting empty. I was planning to eventually sell it but hadn't gotten around to listing it because I was dealing with my grief and focusing on my career. My sister Carol, 35F, and I grew up visiting the house every weekend, and it held a lot of memories. Some background about our family: Carol had her daughter Phoebe, 20F, when she was just 15. It was obviously a huge shock for everyone, but our family pulled together to help raise Phoebe. Carol finished high school and later got her associate's degree while our parents helped with childcare. I was only 10 when Phoebe was born, so we grew up more like sisters than aunt and niece. We were always extremely close, and I felt very protective of her. Phoebe was a bright student and got accepted into community college last year. That's where she met Harold, 22M. He seemed decent at first, had a steady job at a local warehouse, treated Phoebe well, and appeared responsible. He even impressed our parents by always showing up to family dinners on time and bringing dessert. Carol was a bit worried because she didn't want Phoebe to repeat her own history of becoming a young mother, but Harold appeared to be more mature than most guys his age. Well, despite their precautions, Phoebe got pregnant 6 months into their relationship. They were living in a tiny studio apartment at the time. Harold was working full-time at the warehouse, but between student loans and basic living expenses, they could barely make rent, let alone afford a bigger place for the baby. Phoebe had to drop out of college to work part-time at a cafe until she couldn't anymore due to the pregnancy. That's when I offered to let them stay in my grandmother's house. It seemed like the perfect solution. The house wouldn't be empty, Phoebe and Harold would have space for the baby, and I could help my niece without directly giving her money, which I knew would hurt her pride. The only condition was that they would pay all utilities and maintain the property. No rent, just basic bills and upkeep. Harold eagerly agreed and promised to handle everything. The first few months went smoothly. Phoebe had a beautiful baby girl, who they named Rose. She stayed home to care for the baby while Harold continued working. Every time I called to check in, Phoebe sounded happy and said Harold was handling all the responsibilities. He would even send me occasional texts thanking me for my help and assuring me that all bills were being paid on time. Then last week, I got a call from the electric company about an overdue balance of $3,000. I was confused because Harold had been sending me screenshots of paid bills for months. It turned out he never switched the utilities into their name as he claimed. All the screenshots were fake. He had edited old payment confirmations to make it look like he was paying monthly bills. When I called Phoebe about this, she was shocked. Harold had shown her the same fake payment confirmations whenever she asked about bills. She had no idea they weren't actually being paid. The electricity was still in my name, and the company was threatening to shut it off within 48 hours. I immediately paid the bill to keep the power on for Phoebe and the baby. When I confronted Harold, he gave a bunch of excuses about forgetting to switch the account and having temporary financial difficulties. But Phoebe later discovered the truth: he had been gambling online using the money that should have gone to bills. She found hundreds of transactions from betting sites on their joint bank statement. After this discovery, I told Phoebe that while she and Rose are welcome to stay in the house, I want Harold out. I can't trust someone who would lie for months and gamble away money meant for basic utilities. Phoebe understands my position but is struggling with the decision because she wants Rose to have both parents under one roof. My sister Carol thinks I'm being too harsh. She says Harold made a mistake but deserves another chance since he's Rose's father. She keeps bringing up how she was a single mother and doesn't want Phoebe to go through the same struggles. Our parents agree with Carol and think I should let them work things out as a family. But I don't see gambling and months of deliberate deception as a simple mistake. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. It was sustained dishonesty that put his family at risk. What if I hadn't caught the utility issue and their power had been shut off with a newborn in the house? Phoebe is currently staying at Carol's place with Rose while she figures out what to do. Harold is still in my house, claiming he has nowhere else to go and that separating him from his daughter would be cruel. He's been posting on social media about how I'm trying to break up his family over one mistake. I feel bad about potentially separating Rose from her father, but I also believe Harold brought this on himself. It's my house, and I have the right to not want a liar and gambler living there. Phoebe is welcome to stay if she chooses, but I want Harold gone. Ida for wanting to kick him out? Update: when a lot has happened since my original post. After reading all the supportive comments validating my concerns about Harold, I decided to stand firm on my decision. Many people pointed out that his behavior showed signs of a serious gambling addiction and that enabling him would only make things worse. Phoebe had been staying at Carol's house with Rose, trying to figure out what to do. During this time, Harold started love-bombing her with promises of change. He showed her screenshots of him supposedly closing all his gambling accounts and even sent her links to gambling addiction support groups he claimed he would join. He kept texting her about how much he missed Rose and how a baby needs both parents together. Phoebe was starting to waver. She told me that maybe we were being too hard on Harold, that everyone deserves a second chance. Carol, who had initially defended Harold, was now staying neutral and telling Phoebe to take her time making a decision. Our parents were still pushing for reconciliation, saying Rose deserved a chance at having a complete family. But then everything changed when Mike, 25M, one of Harold's co-workers from the warehouse, reached out to Phoebe through Facebook. Mike had seen Harold's social media posts about me trying to break up his family and felt compelled to tell Phoebe the truth. According to Mike, Harold had actually been fired from the warehouse 3 months ago for theft. He had been stealing inventory, mainly electronics and small appliances, and selling them online to get money for gambling. The company had security footage of Harold taking items during his night shifts. When confronted, he admitted to the theft and was fired on the spot. The company had decided not to press charges if he agreed to pay back what he stole through a payment plan. That's why none of us knew about it. Harold had managed to keep it quiet and had been pretending to go to work every day since then. Phoebe was devastated by this revelation. When she confronted Harold, he initially tried to deny it but eventually broke down and confessed everything. The truth was even worse than what Mike had told us. Harold hadn't just lost his job, he had also taken out multiple payday loans in Phoebe's name using her personal information. He had stolen her social security card and driver's license while she was in the hospital having Rose. The total debt was around $15,000 spread across several payday loan companies. He had been intercepting the mail and deleting emails so Phoebe wouldn't see any loan statements or collection notices. He claimed he kept taking out new loans to pay off old ones, thinking he would win big gambling and fix everything before anyone found out. After this confession, Phoebe immediately went to the police to file a report about the identity theft. Our parents finally stopped defending Harold when they heard about him stealing Phoebe's identity. Carol felt terrible about ever suggesting Phoebe give him another chance and has been helping her contact all the loan companies to dispute the fraudulent debts. I went with Phoebe and Carol to the house to help her pack up her things, and what we found was shocking. The house was in terrible condition. Harold had pawned several appliances including my grandmother's almost new washer and dryer set. The garage was filled with empty alcohol bottles and fast food containers. There were cigarette burns all over the carpet even though I had specifically forbidden smoking inside because my grandmother had asthma and I wanted to maintain the smoke-free environment. While cleaning out their bedroom, Phoebe found a shoebox under the bed full of gambling receipts and pawn shop tickets. Despite his claims about closing his online gambling accounts, he had been driving to a casino 40 miles away almost every night. He had even pawned Phoebe's engagement ring, which had been her great-grandmother's, though he had told her it was being cleaned and sized. I immediately called a locksmith to change all the locks. While we were there, Harold showed up drunk in the middle of the day. He started yelling about how we were ruining his life and trying to steal his daughter. When he attempted to grab Rose from Phoebe's arms, Carol called the police. They came and removed him from the property, but not before he punched a hole in the living room wall. Phoebe is now living with Carol permanently and has started the process of getting a restraining order. My lawyer is handling Harold's eviction, even though there was no formal lease, just to ensure everything is done legally. The lawyer also advised Phoebe to get a DNA test for Rose, not because we doubt her paternity, but to have all documentation in order for future custody issues. This has all been incredibly hard on Phoebe, but she's staying strong for Rose. She's already enrolled in a program to get her GED since she had to drop out of college when she got pregnant. Carol and I are helping her build a case for full custody. I wish I had trusted my initial instincts about Harold sooner, but at least we discovered the truth before things got even worse. Now we just have to deal with the aftermath and help Phoebe rebuild her life. Update 2: The situation with Harold has become even more twisted than we initially thought. My lawyer handling Harold's eviction uncovered something really disturbing during the legal process. Apparently, Harold had been methodically trying to establish squatters' rights on my house since they first moved in. The lawyer found half-completed legal documents in Harold's home office that showed he'd been planning this for months. This explained why he never switched the utilities into his name. He was deliberately keeping paper trails showing his connection to the property. He had been getting all sorts of mail delivered there under his name, setting up subscriptions, and even tried registering to vote using that address multiple times. He had a whole folder of proof of residency documents that he'd been collecting. The lawyer said this is actually a common scam. People move into properties with permission, then try to claim they've been living there so long they have rights to the place. They make it extremely difficult for the real owner to sell or evict them. Harold was apparently hoping to drag out any potential eviction process long enough to force me to either let them stay or pay him to leave. But here's where everything got really dark. Phoebe finally went through their old emails and messages after the lawyer suggested looking for evidence of premeditation. She found conversations between Harold and his mother dating back to before she even got pregnant. It turns out they had actually targeted Phoebe on purpose. Harold's mother worked in the administrative office at Phoebe's community college. She had seen my grandmother's obituary in the local paper and recognized our family name. Since she knew I lived in a different city and the house was empty, they figured I might let Phoebe stay there if she was in need. His mother helped Harold enroll in several of the same classes as Phoebe, even though he had no interest in those subjects. She told him which coffee shop Phoebe usually studied at and suggested ways to accidentally meet her. The whole relationship was a setup from the start. They hadn't planned on Phoebe getting pregnant, but once it happened, they saw it as the perfect way to solidify their plan. Phoebe showed me the messages. There were dozens of conversations between Harold and his mother plotting everything out. They discussed how to make sure Phoebe kept the baby, knowing it would make it harder for me to evict them later. They even talked about trying to convince Phoebe to ask me to add Harold to the property deed after they got married, which they planned to push for quickly. The police investigation has expanded beyond just the identity theft. They're now looking into Harold and his mother's history because they found evidence this might not be their first time running this kind of scam. They had apparently moved around a lot, and the detective mentioned there were similar complaints in other towns. Phoebe got Rose's DNA test results back, and despite everything, Rose is definitely Harold's daughter. But now we're dealing with new problems because Harold's mother is threatening to sue for grandparents' rights. She's claiming that since Harold is being wrongfully kept from his daughter, he's not, he just hasn't bothered trying to see her, she has a right to visitation. Our lawyer says her case is weak, especially given the new evidence of their scam, but it's still causing Phoebe a lot of anxiety. I've started repairs on the house, but we had to install security cameras first because Harold kept driving by at night and sometimes parking across the street for hours. The police have given him several warnings about violating the direction to stay away from the property, which is helping build the case for Phoebe's permanent restraining order. Carol is furious with herself for ever defending Harold. She's been going above and beyond to help Phoebe document everything for the courts. Our parents finally understand the magnitude of what Harold and his mother tried to do and have stopped pushing for any kind of reconciliation. Update 3 today marked the official end of this whole nightmare. The judge sentenced Harold to 4 years in prison for multiple charges. The final list included identity theft, credit card fraud, violation of restraining orders, conspiracy to commit property fraud, and attempted grand theft. His mother got 2 years for conspiracy and interfering with the investigation. She also lost her job at the college when they found out she had been accessing student records to find potential targets. The house has finally been sold, though I took a significant loss on it. Even after fixing all the damage Harold caused, the property value dropped because of all the police incidents. The neighbors filed multiple noise complaints during the time Harold lived there, and there were too many documented disturbances. But honestly, I'm just relieved to be done with it. I used part of the money from the sale to help Phoebe get set up in a nice 2-bedroom apartment near Carol's house. Phoebe has made amazing progress. She got a job at a local daycare center that allows her to bring Rose with her, which saves on childcare costs. She's enrolled to restart college next semester, focusing on early childhood education this time. Carol and our parents have worked out a schedule to help with Rose when Phoebe needs to study or work extra hours. The custody situation resolved itself in an unexpected way. When Harold realized he was facing serious prison time, he agreed to sign away his parental rights in exchange for a slightly reduced sentence. His mother tried to fight this by filing for grandparents' rights, but the judge dismissed the case as soon as our lawyer presented evidence of their property scam and how they had targeted Phoebe. During the sentencing hearing, we learned even more about their past. This wasn't their first attempt at property fraud. They had tried similar scams in 3 other towns, but their previous targets had been elderly homeowners who were too embarrassed to press charges. The prosecutor said our case finally put a stop to their pattern. Phoebe is doing much better now. She still sometimes struggles with guilt about bringing Harold into our lives, but therapy is helping her work through it. Rose is growing into a happy, healthy toddler who has no memory of all this drama. Carol says she's just like Phoebe was at that age, always smiling and completely unbothered by chaos around her. Looking back, I'm so glad I trusted my instincts when I first discovered the utility bill issue. If I hadn't pushed to get Harold out then, they might have succeeded in their scheme. The lawyer said that if they had managed to stay just a few months longer, evicting them would have become much more complicated. The whole experience has actually brought our family closer together. Carol and I talk almost daily now, and our parents have become much more involved in Phoebe and Rose's lives. Even my grandmother's house being sold turned out okay. The new owners are a young family who plan to maintain all her beautiful gardens. This will be my last update because there's really nothing left to tell. Harold and his mother are in prison, Phoebe and Rose are thriving, and I'm back to focusing on my own life. Sometimes I still feel angry about everything that happened, but mostly I'm just relieved we caught them before they could do more damage. It may not be the happy ending everyone wanted, but it's the right one.